All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Tennisha Martin, and this is AI Thoughts Online. I'm excited because this is our first episode where we'll be talking about artificial intelligence and talking about the ramifications and our thoughts just about what it means and how it's going to impact our day-to-day lives. So I'm excited to have Amber Ivey and Mari Galloway here with me today. I'll let the ladies introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Amber Ivey. The quick version is I'm here because I love AI and it's my initials. Not really. I do love AI. My parents got that right. But my background's in data. And more recently, over the last probably like 5 years, I've been doing research into AI in particular with the data lens of how we ensure our data is ready for tools like artificial intelligence. My day job, I work for an organization that helps organizations use data, different data tools across the country, mostly in government. And in my afternoon job, I do a lot of things. I have a kids AI focused organization called AI Digitals, and I podcast at AI Decodes the System. So nice to meet you all, and happy to be a part of this conversation.
Nice to meet you. Great background. I'm Mari Galloway. I am a cybersecurity practitioner doing all things across cybersecurity. I am not an AI expert, but I do like it. And I've really been diving into it over the last few months, just trying to figure out, what it is, how we can use it, and how, in the world domination plan, I can use it to make some money on the side. I also run the Women's Society of Cyberjutsu, a 501c3 national nonprofit organization providing hands-on training to women and girls so that they can enter and stay in the space. We work with all types of women, all types of groups, and it's just a safe place to come to and learn and grow and get some of those technical ninja skills that we all need to slay this industry. And I'm based out of Las Vegas, so even better.
Yeah, you're in like the best place.
Awesome. And I'm the host, Tennisha Martin. I am the executive director and founder of Black Girls Hack. I actually started this podcast because I am currently working on a doctorate in cybersecurity where my focus is artificial intelligence and penetration testing. And I also run a nonprofit that does all of the same types of things that Mari does. We work together frequently, and she's one of my friends, so I love her. And so we're super excited to get this started. So our topic today is extinction level events. So I think it was maybe a couple of weeks ago, second week of March or so, the State Department commissioned article came out about how AI was had the possibility to be an extinction level event if the government did not intervene. And I'm going to read just the first paragraph of this. There's a Time article that was put out about it, where it says the U.S. government must move quickly and decisively to avert substantial national security risks stemming from artificial intelligence, which could, in the worst case, cause an extinction level threat to the human species. Says a report commissioned by the U.S. government that was published on that Monday. So, thoughts, ladies, extinction level events. That seems super serious.
I was like, one way to kick off the podcast.
I mean, dinosaurs went extinct, right?
Yeah.
You don't say like that means that's catastrophic. So what they're saying is that AI could have catastrophic effects and like wipe us out. Is this like iRobot times right now? Because every time I think of AI, I think of that movie because they show the robot that's got the reasoning and the empathy and the feelings trying to save what's happening from the robots that may have started to take over and use their mind to do those kinds of things. Is it possible we could be wiped out? Maybe.
That's
I mean,
AI, your initial thoughts?
I'm also in the maybe camp as Mari because also I hate that some of our first introductions with AI are like Terminator, iRobot. Like it's this extreme levels of this technology, which is what this article is talking about. And I'm in the camp of AI has to succeed or I can't use my name. Like it needs to Something has to happen. No, but seriously, I'm in the camp of there's a world where we are today, where we're not at AGI, but there is a world where we will be at AGI, and I do believe that. I do have concerns. Like, I'm in that camp that's like 10 to 20%. Stuff could go down, and it could technically be used by humans or by itself for harm, particularly to cause wars, misinformation, cyber attacks. Like, I think about those things in a real way. I don't think about it in a way that I think about a way it will attack systems, and it will either be a human actor using it, or it gets smart enough to just go off the wire. But I think the threat is the human using it wrong first before the AI is itself doing this damage or harm.
I don't know. I think it's possible. I think I'm probably more on the. I will say that I am like an unofficial doomsday prepper, so I am probably on like the right side of the spectrum in terms of whether or not this is possible. And I say that just because, you know, we have a lot of technologies right now that are using AI for a lot of different things. And I don't think that the folks that put these things into implementation gave it much thought. So thinking about drones, like for example, think about like weapon systems, missile systems, for example, things of that nature. And I've seen that there's like a set of ground rules that basically say, number one, don't hurt humans. Number two, and this might have been in a movie too. Don't hurt yourself. Number three is, prioritize those items like in that order. So like, don't basically take out humans in order to save yourself. And, and then we see, and I think iRobot's probably 10, 15 years ago at this point. And we're just now having
something, honestly.
It might be, but, we've seen all of these extreme, like worst case scenarios of what can happen. And like I said, I don't think people have stopped and said, before they started going full steam ahead on all of the, different AI systems, and think about what the implications could be and what happens, especially as cybersecurity practitioners, if someone were to abuse these systems. So I think that's interesting. And so in May 2023, I think there was like 30,000 people who signed, including some pretty prominent people who signed an open letter that basically called for a halt to all AI training for 6 months in order to assess the risks, the threats, the impact. So do you think that was justified, or do you think that that's basically requesting or impeding technology and innovation in the future?
It depends on who you are when you answer that question. So if I answer from I've worked in government, worked with government folks, I think we were too late. I think that just because of the world I live in the data world, right? We've seen people use data in the wrong way. And we know that a lot of these systems are being trained with data, whether it's unstructured data or structured data. They're learning from data. So we know our data is bad, and we're training these systems on that. We do need to consider that, because we know that data tends to impact or have adverse impacts on certain communities. So on one side, I'm like, y'all are too late. Like I've even said this in other conversations, like that should have happened a long time ago. I had interviewed someone for my podcast, Dr. Roman Chappella. He's actually at Hopkins working on AI, and he jokes around and says AI is old enough to be on Social Security because it's been around for so long. So if it's old enough to be on Social Security, why does ChatGPT make us all afraid? Because we now see a version that is actually open to people and scary, right? So that's on one side. The business side of me is like, there's a level of America allowing you to do things, to try things and be innovative that does help drive our economy. On the other side of that, the UK will put in laws, because they're very much so, like they have data practices and now they have AI language that is coming out that US companies will have to use if they're putting things online. Like we saw that with some of the data stuff. We all have to click if they're going to get our data every single time we go on a computer. That wasn't because of the US, it was because of the stuff that was happening overseas. So there is a world where America can keep going and then others can block it, that allows it to grow. But depending on the hat I'm wearing, I think we should, on both sides, always be aware of this technology and make sure we have guardrails, no matter what systems it's being used in. But business is not interested in that. I was in a conversation with some folks in DC where they brought in different people who were working on AI. I don't know why I was in that room, but I was brought into the room, and that's what they were talking about. Like, they were really excited about pushing this thing forward. And in that room, I was like, no, we need to hold this thing back. So for me, it like depends on the room and where people's risks are, where I like kind of step up. But I do believe we were late on this. I still think we're late. The US doesn't have any guidance other than Biden's executive order. Even that was loosey-goosey. But for sure, in government places where government is using these tools, we definitely need guidance. Private sector is going to do what private sector does. So I'm not sure how much you can pull them back.
They're the stepchildren. No, that was she said some good stuff there.
So when we're talking about bad data, like I have thoughts. We've been, I think, screaming from the rooftops about the bad data for, probably at least decades at this point. We've seen some of the AI implementations before it became mainstream in terms of like the ATS systems for hiring, for example, facial recognitions. Some of the groups, basically said, hey, the error rates for particularly Black women are, I think it's as high as 30-something% in terms of, being able to accurately recognize. And all of that, I think, was not enough to give pause, right? But, I don't think that there's been any real effort to try to fix the bad data and to improve it. And I think in order for us to be able to fix the data, we're going to have to, it's probably a long-term fix, and it's probably going to require that we get more women, more people who are othered, more diversity in the pipeline for employment within the cybersecurity technology AI space, for us to start seeing downstream improvements in terms of the data, because I think that the data that a lot of these systems were trained on are extremely biased, especially if you are within a minority population. And there's also healthcare risks associated with them, because these systems are deciding things like who should get organs, or who should get what type of medication or not, or whether or not they're at risk to be drug seeking, or whatever the case may be. A lot of those things are driven by AI systems. I saw an article, I think last week, about how I think it may have been G or somebody is partnering with AI to basically work on AI assisted surgery tools, for example. So it's like, we have a lot of different applications for where this is going to impact our lives. And, if it's 30% wrong for facial recognition, which could send me to jail for the rest of my life, is it going to end up killing me if it's 30% wrong in a healthcare setting? And then
or someone trained a drone to come after your face and they get the wrong person.
Right. Like Mary doesn't look nothing like me. Like, why did I get hit? What did I do? And then you mentioned risks. So I did see, I think probably about maybe a month or two ago, there was an AI risk management framework that was put out. And I think that the thing that was interesting about that for me was the fact that it included language in there about underrepresented communities and the impact when we're looking at risks from, at least from an ethics perspective, of against, like people of color, underrepresented populations, because of these data issues. So, I know that we saw the documents that came out from the White House recently, in addition to the risk framework. But I don't think that that's enough. What are your thoughts?
Go ahead, Amber.
I don't know if you want me to go first or you want to go on that one.
You can. It's a start. It's something to get the juices flowing, get the minds thinking, get folks to say, hey, this probably isn't enough. Let's go back to the drawing board. Let's make some iterations. It definitely starts with, you talked about everybody's like racing to try to do something with AI and this research and whatnot. And we need to make sure we have those diverse voices in there, and that we make sure that the data is not adversely affecting those groups. Well, that starts with leadership being from those groups. So we mandated, I know, and I know we're having this DEI fight right now, but I know in California they had some laws where you have to have, at least one woman on board. I think those kinds of laws and regulations and rules have to come down from the leadership to say, whether it's Joe Biden, whether it's the states, whatever, whoever makes that decision, to say, as we continue in this race, you need to have folks from these groups, and you have to, and if you don't, here's the fine, the consequences, the penalty for not doing that. And it's got to be similar to what we do with PCI regulations and HIPAA and all of those things, where it's, if you don't do these things, we're going to fine you daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is, until you start doing that. I think that's a place to start. Will that work? Who knows? But this particular AI risk management framework, I think, sets the foundation for us to go in and make changes and make it better. Because now we know where they're thinking and what their mindset is. It's like, okay, you missed the mark here. Let's go back and fix it.
I definitely agree with the fact that you said it's a start. I'm glad something happened, and I think it had to happen because of what was happening around OpenAI in particular. But I'm still the camp of like, if it's all enough for Social Security and we're just now doing it, I often feel that government used to be, let me start over. Government used to be at the edge of things. Like if we think about the internet and think about all this stuff, that came from like beginnings of something that the Army had a tech in. Thinking about getting to space and all that stuff was like government pushing these different ideas and pushing folks, even on healthcare, even today, like there's plenty of grants that like are at the front of that stuff.
Right.
So it makes me nervous when we're slowly getting behind on some of these things. And with something as big as, if we said 30,000 people signed the letter and you got people doing secret interviews, and the godfather AI himself said, I'm out, I messed up, I ruined and created something. It makes me think back to like Albert Einstein and those folks who were working on atomic bomb and fusion and Oppenheimer. And those folks were like, they're trying to innovate, trying to do something very quickly for this one use case. And then, oops, we created something and now we're all scared of every single day. And I feel that way with AI often. So if all those people are literally, can I ask a question back, Tennisha?
Yeah, of course.
If I was in a place and that was my job and I was in one of these places and I'm literally like, this thing is about to literally make us extinct in less than 5 years, is what a lot of the articles are saying, I'm stopping, or I'm going on every single news show in the world and literally saying, this is why, this is what's going to happen. I'm not hiding and doing an interview and not getting quoted. I'm just not. So on one side, I'm like, are they really that scared? Or are they more so saying, let's warn everyone, if used the wrong way in the wrong hands, or if it gets to a certain point, then we need to be worried about it. But right now, we're all fine, and we're all fine with collecting a check. That's going to lead to extinction. I don't understand. So
I have a hot take on that. Okay. To answer that, okay?
I watched his 60-minute interview earlier. This was born out of a mistake. So, and he says that in the interview, it was an error or a failure, something happened. He wasn't intending to create this.
Oh.
Something failed, and in the failure came this innovation.
Oh, wow.
I was like, that's a different way. So I wasn't sure if it was a real interview or a fake one, because AI can do
all the things.
Right.
But if you guys can watch that, I suggest you watch it. It's like 15 minutes. It's a really good interview. Go ahead, Tennisha. I need to hear this hot take.
So this is my hot take, right? We're in an era where it's all about clickbait. It's all about shock and awe. It's all about, engagement farming. And I think that, there are ways that this information could have been put out in a way which was not that. But when you say, hey, human level, extinction level event, it's going to get people to click on it, because if it's like, hey, there's a comet coming down that's about to destroy the earth, you definitely want to know about it, right? But my other other side of my hot take is you mentioned that AI is probably old enough to be collecting Social Security at this point, right? It hasn't been great all along, but I would say that the negative impacts have been to underrepresented communities. 30% of Black women being unfairly incarcerated or accused or whatever isn't an acceptable risk. You know what I'm saying? Like Black women whose names are Tennisha who are trying to apply for jobs, not getting them because the ATS system discriminated against them is an acceptable risk, right? But when you have the ability to impact, what's considered mainstream America, then it's a problem. You know what I'm saying? And I think that from a risk perspective, if it was just impacting Black women, for example, or is just impacting underrepresented communities, that's fine. You know what I'm saying? For the larger population. Look at, the bulk of the folks that are in the leadership. You mentioned leadership earlier. Look at the bulk of the people who are in the leadership and what they care about. Look at I think the political race that's going on, the things that they're focusing on at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was an acceptable risk. And I think now that it has the ability to possibly negatively impact the majority, you know what I'm saying? That's why we're hearing about it now. It's not because it's, just now being an issue. It's because now it's the ability to impact people who are not underrepresented communities.
That's a very good point. Before you said that, I was thinking about numbers because I was talking to someone else about just stats in general. So if we're 14% of the population, just looking at Black people in general, 14% of the population, you don't bill for the minority, you bill for the majority normally in those type of systems. Of course, we're trying to break those systems and build with community in mind, with the people who are going to be using it and for everyone. But you're right, they're not going to think about the 14% or even less than that. If you then cut the part of that as women and then cut the part that may have been impacted, they're not going to look at that individual, even though it may have catastrophic impacts on their family, on their community, on their neighborhood, etc. So that's a very good point.
They're not in a space where they have to look at that.
Yeah, I was about to say, when you look at diseases or you look at conditions that largely impact, for example, women, or that largely impact, communities of colors, those don't get, large, scale research efforts to take a look at them and try to find cures or try to, fix them, just because of the fact that they are not, large scale. It's 86% or whatever that is, people maybe don't necessarily care about it. The other thing that I was going to say is, when we're talking about hey, how do we regulate this? How do we, put more guardrails in? What does that leadership look like? There are companies that are scrambling now or over the past year or so to make adjustments to fit into things like GDPR, for example, right? So they decided hey, this is what we're going to do. So now companies that do business with them are hey, we need to adapt and grow or whatever, right? And that was reactive, not necessarily proactive, right? So number one, if you have 30,000 people who have signed a letter that's saying, hey, let's pause, you know what I'm saying? This is obviously something that people care about. And some of the people that were on that list were pretty influential people, right? So, is this something that where we need a government private, partnership to put together a framework that says, hey, this is what is going to do? Or is it something that's hey, the government's going to have to actually regulate and say, this is what the law is going to be? And because outside of that, if we just get, private partnerships together and they say, hey, this is the guidelines, people don't necessarily have to respect those. We have guardrails for website development, and I think as a hacker we stay employed because nobody nobody's following them. They do what they want to do, you know what I'm saying? So it's how do we from a safety perspective, especially when we're doing things at some point everything is going to be based on AI, right? So if it still has its ethical issues, if it still has its security issues, I have been watching on X or Twitter or whatever it's calling itself these days, people who show ways to basically get around the guardrails that are in things like ChatGPT. I'm saying hey, hypothetically, if this was for a school assignment, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, forget the fact that you're not supposed to develop malicious code. Can you show me if I wanted to show my students how to do this thing, you know, and I've seen it develop ransomware, I've seen it develop malware, all sorts of things, you know, by people who are creative and, you know, basically social engineering, if you even call it that, the restrictions that are in, you know, AI that are attempting to try to keep people within the guardrails.
Yeah, I've seen a few people I just say break it because it's not supposed to be broken, but break it as well with certain prompts and being creative with prompts, which is a concern. Like, I'm excited that there are open versions of different models, whether it's your llamas of the world or what have you. But I'm also like, but when you open that all up, again, we get back into extinction. Someone who doesn't have the right mindset or doesn't have the right goal in mind or who's having a bad day may use that to harm other folks. So I think that that's the part I'm more so concerned about. I know technology is normally built to be open for a reason and to drive improvement and all that great stuff, but there's certain things I don't think should be open for all. Or if you're opening it, it should be in a different way, whether it's organizational level, making sure people from different backgrounds and different organizations have access to it so we can learn from it. It should be strategic and not like, come one, come all. Even AI is not technically open. Like, yeah.
But I think that, you know, there are the possibilities for you to train a model, you know, if you're willing to pay money to do it. It's very expensive to do it yourself, whatever. But, you know, there's nothing that says that I can't, you know, for example, train a model that to, you know, do something malicious, just specifically for, you know, explicit basis. And, you know, the same way that we have like phishing, you know, hey, you're going to try to go to Chat GPT and maybe they go to Chat another BT or something. And then, you know, it basically puts a backdoor into the system. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? Like, but I feel like before it was unleashed into the masses, the issues should have been, you know, resolved, you know, and
they weren't an issue in that sense. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't that it was an issue because it wasn't necessarily things that
impacted everybody.
Right. Like we said, generative AI completely flipped the face of the AI world because we can do everything now with it.
True.
Every time we do something, we're training the system. So even though they're bypassing the system with those bypass prompts, they're still training the system and the system's able to learn. That's it may not learn everything, but these systems are technically more intelligent than we are.
This is true. Well, that's assuming that you're allowing them to learn. The thing that I thought was interesting is they have like their version of like an incognito mode where it's like you can put in prompts and you can do things in there and it's not actually using it to learn. And you know what I'm saying? And I don't know if they're actually respecting that. You know, what's to say that they have to respect it? You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, it's secret, but I got the right tap. What you gonna do? You know? But it is possible for people to do things without it becoming aware. Ideally, if they're actually respecting the, you know, incognito mode. I don't think it's called that, but I mean,
I think it is. I thought it was. Like, that sounds familiar to me. It may not be, but I thought it was incognito mode.
Yeah, but it's interesting because like there's no rules in place, right? And there's so many ethical issues. We can't even assume that, you know, people will be guided by ethics in using these systems because, you know, realistically, if you cared about ethics, I don't think that it would ever been, we wouldn't have a OpenAI or Chat GPT at this point. You know what I'm saying? It would have been like, you know, well, let's wait another 5 years. It's been, you know, however many years at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's another
5 years?
You know what I'm saying? But so I think AI, you mentioned the godfather of AI, he quit his Google job saying that AI was scary. AI chatbots could one day be smarter than humans, and that he regretted his life work. Should that tell us something?
It tells me something. So for me, it was like when he did that, it did like kind of shake me up a bit. I'm like, dang, if this guy left his job and then it's like openly talking about something that he probably has some type of NDA on, like saying like, or maybe he was very strategic in what he signed. I'm just saying, like, I regret making this. That did cause for pause. But Google, I know Google kind of rushed theirs because of OpenAI and everybody else just rushed to get theirs out. That is my biggest concern is the rush and the time that it could have taken for us to, like you said, put in really good guardrails and policies in place, whether mostly, hopefully by a government actor, so people can actually listen to it. I love the idea of fines that you were talking about earlier. But I think that because OpenAI decided to come out the gate with this big new tool and then the promise of 3.5 at the time and then a promise of 4, because I think it had already allowed people to have access, because some of the people I knew had access to some of the earlier versions of it. When it came out and they were like, anybody can use it, then you see your Googles of the world expediting their process, Facebook Llama expediting their process, then everybody and their mother getting on OpenAI's API to create their own tool, to the point where the first ChatGPT app wasn't even ChatGPT's app. It was another app people downloaded because ChatGPT or OpenAI didn't come out with their app until later. So it was like so many people just start creating these companies and going. And now we're at the point where this is where VC money is going. If you put AI in your name, you're more likely to get more money from a VC. Folks are literally spinning off AI companies everywhere that we can find. Heck, I did too. AI for kids. Like, I'm like also understanding that this is a moment you can get in on, but it's at the same time with that happening, I think pacing it is our problem, is that we're going so fast here. I think they said this tool actually broke records with the number of humans that downloaded it within a short amount of time. Like we've never seen people download an app within a month. I think it was a month. It was like 130 million users went on that app in a month. I think before that, I think the person who broke the record may have been like Instagram or someone else. The fact that this thing hit 100-something million humans in a month, like that is crazy to me and mind blowing. And then thinking about how this stuff is now going to enterprise with companies like Copilot. Microsoft said, you know what? Let's get in on this. Now we have Microsoft Copilot. Everyone has Microsoft. We now have Copilot on everyone's computer and we don't have guardrails. Like you can't even pull it back now because it's so ingrained in everything because of enterprise level, and it's going to get even more enterprise wide. Microsoft has partnerships with IBM. Like there's all these different partnerships that are popping up everywhere around AI. So all that to say, we missed the door for when we should have kind of closed it. And at this point, all I can hope for is that I don't think it's going to happen at a federal level. I just don't think, other than what we've seen. And I don't think, when I say federal, I mean Congress. I don't think Congress is going to enact anything. I don't know if y'all watched the session. It was very disappointing. I've never seen a session where people talked about, oh, I used it to write an email. That is very cute. And I'm glad that's what your staffer told you to say. That is not what I need to hear. We're talking about something that can lead to extinction level events. So back to my original point, I think we're out the door. I think states are starting to adopt, some folks are starting to adopt policy at a state level. I think that's our best bet right now, is states will adopt stuff and then it pushes up to the feds. I don't think the federal government is going to touch this anytime soon. Outside of Biden's.
I don't want to derail us, but I don't know that we can trust the states either. Personally,
well, yeah.
I want to try to keep this on AI, but I just want to say that the states, given the opportunity to provide regulations for things, have not been.
It's going to be a long time, but it's going to be quicker than the feds.
But I think that very high profile things like the Godfather of AI. There's another woman, Timnit Jibru. I think she ended up quitting. It may have been Google also citing ethical concerns. Yeah. So and it's like, you have all of these very high profile people who are saying like, hey, there are safety and ethical considerations that are not being considered in our rush to put this out. From with a business hat on, it makes sense. You want to be first to market. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You want to be, the industry leader, especially from, your Googles of the world, your Facebooks of the world. It makes sense. And when we're looking at it from the data perspective, like, I think that Facebook, one of the biggest, I think, data brokers probably in the world, if they can learn from what people are asking, and you've got 130 million people who've downloaded these apps and they're using them to do all of the things, you know what I'm saying? That's more data that they can then use to you know what I'm saying, those letters they now have access to, you know, those, you know, whatever. There have been companies who have had their entire code bases basically ingested because their developers were using the tools to help them generate code or fix code or identify whatever the case may be. You know, of course, lesson learned at this point. But I don't know that we can necessarily trust the states to, and I don't know that I want to trust.
Who do we have, Tennisha? Who do we have?
It's going to be a multi-group thing, multi-stakeholders type of thing. This is moving way too fast for us to wait on state, federal, local. It's got to be a group effort, period.
But, you know, who's going to do it? You know, when do we stop and...
No, we're not stopping. So we can knock that out. That's not stopping.
But who is going to do it, and who is going to make it happen before it gets to the point where we have iRobot? You know, basically.
I suggest that man go back to those 300 interviews.
It's like the fast moving train. I don't think we can. We just have to figure out how to build things in the way.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and we've done this across all things technology.
True.
You know, every time something new gets introduced, it's like this mad race to be like, all right, we need legislation, we need blah, we need blah, we need blah. And we do the same song and dance every time.
So if we're not going to get like basically international, so like if we're not going to have different countries basically work together to do this basically at a legislative level, right? And
they're trying to have conversations. I don't think the U.S. is going to
agree.
I just don't think it is, because we have an opportunity now to do it if we want to. Like we don't. Like we're not going to. Like the books, the grams, all these sites exist that collect so much data. Apps collect so much data. The fact that me talking about something is going to literally pop up in an ad.
Yep.
Like we have full surveillance of humans. And we have a problem. And people are like, hey, can you stop this from happening? Or can you let me control my data? And you're seeing what's happening. And they're like, okay. So I definitely don't think with this amount of money is adding to the GDP. No, ma'am.
Yeah. Way too much. There's too much there. The amount of information you can discern from what people are looking at, from chatbots that are learning because they can finish your sentences for you. Right. The amount of data is freaking nuts. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you know what kind of good stuff can come out of that big pile of data in that data lake that can save people's lives?
Yeah.
And who owns that data?
Whichever organization is able to filter it out. So right now, Google.
And can they sell that? You know, do you understand what I'm saying? Like we haven't even gotten to the point where, you know, we're having the same types of conversations, nuanced conversations, where it's like, you know, hey, can I be able to opt out? You know what I'm saying? Like right now, there is no concept of I want to opt out from, you know, my data basically being consumed and you know, the chatbots could at this point could probably, you know, say, hey, I can tell you what Tennisha does from the time she gets up to the time she goes to sleep, because between the many devices that you know, they probably know, they're like, hey, it's 2:15, she's probably gonna go to the bathroom right now. You know what I'm saying? Like they probably know, you know, all of the things before I know them. And, you know, from a data perspective, it makes sense that, you know, the same folks that are doing the GDPR are pushing out, you know, regulations and addressing this early, because that's in line with their overall privacy concerns for their country. But, you know, in the US, we don't have that same like national, you know, respect for privacy. It's not a focus.
Unless you rhyme with Micmac.
So I guess my next question is, so if we were be able to, you know, come up with some regulations and stuff like that, how would the regulations balance the need for innovation and progress in AI technology while considering safety and ethical considerations? You know, is that even possible at this point, or is that just like a lofty goal that's not going to happen?
No, I think some people are trying things like explainable AI or XAI, where like, because AI is this black box, we don't know how, because of all these darn perimeters and all these different decisions it's making, how it's making the decision, being even able to make sure you can explain it seems like a rational thing that someone should be able to do before you put it in the market where it is used for human decisions and human decision making. I think you should be able to make a decision on that. Predictive analytics has been around for some time, which is a type of use of AI, right? And we saw that those systems have been taking kids out of their home incorrectly, particularly Black and brown kids, because of the data that has been in there. They tend to make very good decisions, not to say that, but they also make bad decisions. So I used to always hear them say, well, it's a black box, it's a black box. If you're taking a child out of someone's home and disrupting a child and family's life, it shouldn't be a black box. Like, that shouldn't even be an option.
There should be some human oversight.
Applied to a human life. Like, to me, that should be very clear, very easy to say. If it's something like an LLM where I'm just talking back and forth and chatting, I lower stakes for me. Right. If it's something related to you deciding to operate on my body or do things like that, where it literally has a human involved, I think simple things we can put in place that allow us to get us to a place where it feels less risky. And the AIs that we don't care as much about, because they may just be for make our jobs easier, et cetera, I don't have as much allegiance to, like LLM and things like that, having too much around it other than it being used or applied to a human's life.
Mary, your thoughts?
Come back to me.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those things where it's like, if you're trying to serve two masters, it's not going to work, right? I don't know that we can necessarily move towards innovation and progress, and then also consider ethical concerns and safety. I don't think it's possible to do both. I think that, like, this is the same type of trade-off where it's like, you can get it fast, or you can get it cheap, or you can, you know what I'm saying? Like, when you make those from a project management perspective, you can choose two of the three, but not the three. I don't think that it's possible, because I think for us to prioritize safety and prioritize ethics, it would require, if not a full stop, then a pause. It would require like some quiet reflection or prayer and meditation. I don't know. It's going to require something, but I don't think that is I think that we have a focus now of innovation. And I think that by the time we would be able to get to an extinction level event, the fortunes of the world would probably be so stinking rich from the different ways that they've been able to apply it that maybe they don't necessarily care. Maybe they're in their bunkers underneath their campuses, and they're like, sucks for the rest of you guys, but I feel like it's before it was unleashed into the world, and I feel like we have a demarcation point that was probably like a year or so ago. Before that happened, when those 30,000 people said, hey, let's chill out for a minute, there should have been an executive order that was put out that says, hey, let's pause, which is crazy, because if you were to say pause, then I think there would probably require a lot of conversations, because at this point everything uses it, at the grocery store, doctors' offices, ATS systems. So it's like all hiring, it would probably have the same level of impact as COVID did initially, in terms of like, what does this mean for everybody, but I mean, I think that extinction level event is not outside the realm of possibility. I've seen some of the robot competitions where they're like playing sports, or they're jumping rope, or they're doing whatever. What's to keep them from picking up a samurai sword and making more of themselves and attacking? Like, I feel like the extinction level event is super dramatic and clickbaity, but I don't think that we are technologically speaking that far away from that being a possibility.
So I would agree with you, Tennisha. I don't think you can have innovation and ethics together, because you're gonna bust through some ethical things trying to figure out some stuff. Of course, things that we may not think are unethical, but when you really, really sit down and look at it, like, yeah, that can probably be perceived as that. So I don't think there ever will be. I do believe that robots can and will, if we continue to go down the path that we go down, that we continue to learn how these things work and how to program them to do different things and to understand different than what we understand. I think they will get to the point of being able to sit right in front of you and have a conversation.
Yeah.
It's like you're talking to a person, but it's not. I think we can get to that. I don't know if you guys remember the movie Artificial Intelligence. I think it came out in the early 2000s. And there was this war between the AI robots and the humans. And it was such a fascinating story and movie during that time, because the little boy that they had, he had feelings, he had emotions. He was like, my mother loves me, I love her, and I miss her, and I want her. And it takes you through just kind of them trying to get this little kid out of that city because they were going to kill him because he was a robot. I feel like we'll be at that point, but we may also be at a point where we can take back control from them if we ever got to that point.
So when we're talking about like safeguards, and like how do we get to the point where we can take back control at this point? You know what I'm saying?
No, because that movie, everybody disappeared except for the little boy in the robot ship.
Oh darn! I haven't seen that one. I need to watch it.
Like
I was thinking the same thing.
Cities and stuff were covered in water, and he was still trying to find the mother. And it wasn't a real person. It was a statue, a Blue Angel statue. And that was like called he was trying to find that still all of these years later.
Wow, that's depressing.
I know. It was such an interesting movie.
I mean, even in the AI, I don't know if y'all seen some of the AI like videos where it's like show the beginning of time versus like the end of time. Every time we become robots. And it's like a human robot type scenario when AI produces its outcome. It's literally like a futuristic world where we become robots. And a lot of people believe that's what happens when you get advanced anyway. So I don't know. But all that to say, I was about to say something else. I don't know why I went there. Oh, have y'all seen Figure AI, OpenAI's robot that was talking back and forth and able to do the different activities? If you have not, go to YouTube. Go to YouTube and look up Figure AI. So they probably edited for response time. I don't know how quick it was, but literally they have it like talking to him like a human, like exactly what you're saying, Mary, around, hey, what is in front of you? He's like an apple, a so-and-so, so-and-so. Okay, hand me this or do this. And he's literally doing see, I'm already one of them. It is literally doing activities with the human and interacting back and forth. That is happening with OpenAI. I do know Elon and those folks, Boston Dynamics, all these folks are trying to build different tools. But Figure AI, a lot of people were spooked about that when it came out. Again, they had a new video a couple months ago, maybe even a month ago. That was like pretty advanced. And then there's other technologies that are allowing you to do the direct talking to the app, where it's literally responding back to you as if close to real time. So they're already getting closer to integrating it. I think we're still at a place where we're early enough where it's still not a lot of adoption, because even with people who are using AI, they use it like once and then they put it down. There's not a lot of people who are like using it because they they don't understand how to go back and forth with the prompts. They don't know how to do that. So you still have a time where humans, they're just not adopting it as quick as you would think. And people are not interested in robots being in their home because I Robot and all these other movies. But I think you have time before you get Figure AI and those type of tools into mainstream and in the home.
So I'm going to play the opposite side of that, because you mentioned our friend over at X, Neuralink was put into a guy's head recently, and it's basically allowing him to do some things. So it makes sense to me when you look at things like limb replacements, when you look at things like finding the use of like nanotechnologies, things of that nature, to do replacement. It makes sense to me that the future of the evolution of people, once we start falling apart, we just start replacing them with, electronic parts. And at what point do those electronic parts, decide like, hey, I'm the captain now, So, that's why I say, I don't think that it's, we're that far off. Because like, even if you look at like prosthetics, for example, initially they were just, not intelligent, they were not like, internet connected things or whatever, but like some of them now, have, electronic capabilities, and it's like, what's stopping us from, basically building
going to the next level.
Right.
I mean, so, when we say like, hey, extinction level, and maybe we're, 100 years away, but like when we're looking at things
more than that,
I want to be here with this extinction. I want to see that.
I don't want anyone I've met to be here.
But when we're talking about it, I'm saying, like, if it gets to the point, they always talk about sentience, when it gets to the point where, they are like, hey, I have feelings, like, where's my mom? You know what I'm saying? Like, when that's a normal thing, our days are numbered at that point, right? Why do they need us? You know what I'm saying? They don't even need to eat.
What you said. Because you're the AI then in this model. Like, you already got to the point where we're integrating. The part I want to add is, I think like cyberpunk or any dystopian future, District 9 or wherever those movies are, it's going to be, I think it's going to be hyper segmented, and then the rest of the world is going to be just third world. Like, I think that's what you're going to experience. There are places in my mind, like there's places right now that still don't have internet. In the US, we have places that still have dial-up. Like, when I say that to people, like, they're like, dial-up, you're joking. I'm like, no, legit. I mean, that noise, like, people don't have that. So I think you're going to have like places like cities for sure, and places that have access you're going to have, but then I think you're going to have these black spots where it's just like, it's like a mix of technology with a mix of whatever is happening in the economy. And it really, I just think of cyberpunk, because none of that stuff looks really nice and attractive. It just looks like in the world and then robots. Like, it just looks weird.
We should use those movies as, even though it's fiction, they come from somewhere. Like, somehow
the AI embedded it, because clearly Tenisha's talking about it too.
I mean, somehow, I mean, I get it, people are creative, but how are you that creative to come up with stuff like that?
20 years ago, AI, you said AI robot came out 20 years ago?
What
I think on somebody's mind. AI robot? Or what's it called? iRobot?
It had to be more than 10.
iRobot was early on, but it was called Artificial Intelligence is the movie. I think it was the early 2001.
Yeah, that's what, 22 years ago?
3 years ago?
23 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, and iRobot was 2004. It was 20 years ago.
Oh my God. I'm only 25, so I was 5 years old when those came out.
That's no business. So, I mean, I think that we're talking about movies now, but like, I mean, that I think the last question that I had for us was like, what role does, like the media and education and public discourse play in shaping, not just the policies and procedures within AI, but I guess the perception and the use of them? Are there people out there that are like, because of what they've seen, are afraid of it? Or, is this something that everybody's just moving full speed? Like, what role do those things play? Because I don't know if I've necessarily seen like, I'm majoring in artificial intelligence as a, like a college degree at this point, you know what I'm saying? So like, it's not like integrated mainstream, but it's coming.
It's on this side.
Winter's coming.
So there's other things that fall into AI that have degree programs.
True.
And so it's like with cybersecurity. We didn't have cybersecurity degrees right away, but all of these other things could fall into cybersecurity. So we'll get to that point. Media plays a heavy role in all of this, especially now because we are so glued to our devices and our social media and the news and the TV. And we've seen how media affected the elections. So I
think it'll impact this one as well. I think it'll be super interesting to see how it worked out.
And that's scary for people.
It is.
It's scary for folks that aren't tech savvy. It's scary for folks that may not be as wealthy to be able to get the knowledge and the education and understand how this works. It's scary for those folks that don't have, internet access out in those rural areas, because this could essentially cut them off from everybody else. That's a scary thought.
Jeez.
I'm already living in poverty. Now I gotta contend with AI. You know what I'm saying? Crap, I can't even get out of this shit, and now I have other things, and it's like, okay.
That was changing my name. I didn't like the way you said AI.
Well, I mean, it's a whole thing, and I don't think that it's in the front of our minds necessarily. I think it might be in the back, because like I saw the other day that there was like some AI influencers. And by AI influencers, I mean they're not actually humans. They're like AI generated.
They make a lot of money.
They do. They've got like 100+ million people, like followers across social media, and somebody's making some money. Obviously, they don't exist. Like, don't come for me. Just in case they're already connected to my Alexa device or something like that. Like, don't come for me. But you know what I'm saying? Somebody's making that money. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, like, I mean, obviously, I think media is going to play a role, but I feel like traditionally, education, the government are typically very far behind where innovation and progress is being made. You know what I'm saying? We'll see the fortunes basically doing some amazing things with these before it gets to the point where we start seeing the downstream impacts in, I think, education and the government in terms of adopting different technologies for different purposes.
Yeah, because I mean, public discourse led to it being banned in a lot of schools, where particularly OpenAI, because I'm not sure if they at the time knew about other models, but particularly banning those tools within schools. So public discourse led there. I think a little bit of media / public discourse and the movement of OpenAI led to the hearing in Congress, because I don't think they would have had that but for those conversations that were happening that had the leaders come up there to Congress to answer questions. So I think that people need to, like, as folks are watching this, people need to do what we do best, and that is make sure we use the system as best as we can here in this country to raise alarms and raise concerns about these different tools. I'll say that on one side, but then on the other side, I'm also team use it. Like, use it, become users of it, because if like right now we're saying people are estimating between 5 and 20% chance of it being an extinction level event. If not, we're living with it. So if we're living with it, I need more than the current whatever percentage of the population is using it to be used to using these tools, to know how to build these tools, to know how to train these tools, to know how to look out for the ethical ramifications of these tools. And I'm concerned that there's a lot of people, particularly people that look like us, just when I'm talking to people who look like us about this, who are like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not using it. And I'm like, but it's to me like the early internet, or to me, it's like without extinction level, I'm like putting that aside. Like, let's just say that doesn't happen. It's like early internet. It's like I always say TI 80. I can't say 83 because then people say I'm aging myself because now it's at higher numbers, but whatever. But it's like that. Like, I remember doing calculus. My teacher made us learn calculus long form, and because she wanted us to learn it, then we could use a 4-function calculator. My calculus teacher did not let us use a TI 83 because she wanted us to learn it. So
I programmed my calculator, so like to be able to do the things for me. And this,
but
TI 83 probably. But
go for it.
I was just gonna say that's my concern. Like I taught, for 3 years at a college level, and I'm telling you, these buggers, like 80% of the papers that were submitted were straight out of ChatGPT. I'm not talking like the gray background, they didn't even edit it or anything. They just copy it and paste it and submitted it. And educational, perspective, I mentioned I'm researching cyber education and how we teach people. I always joke and say I don't need to remember anything that I can Google, right? But if you can have your papers written for you, if you can have all of the things done for you, you know what I'm saying? Like, what is that doing for the critical thinking, for the problem solving skills of the future generations? If they're growing up with these technologies and they're not, you know what I'm saying, they don't have to learn those things because why would they? You know what I'm saying? So I would 100% ban it from schools. Like I would ban it from education.
Education.
You know,
No.
Not.
Can I offer a counter?
Sure. Look, we need to have a whole episode on
yeah, that has to be an
education.
episode. I would do a quick version of it, but that should be an episode. I would love to talk about that. Reason why I say don't, I agree with you. People should not be using it to write their papers and submitting papers. That's not where I want people to use it. It's like the early internet when folks were like mom and pop shops who didn't get online went out of business, right? They had to learn how to literally use old mainframes and old like websites to be able to use it just to understand how it even works. I love the teachers who are using it to help critical thinking and to help kids ask questions and have it set up where they put a persona on it, where it's literally working with the kid to help the kid solve problems. That's how I think we should use these tools in school as problem solvers, as individual tutors. Because right now, a teacher who has 26 kids in a class, they focus on the middle of the class. So they never focus on the front, they never focus on the end. Imagine, and back to Roman Shapala, we were talking about this, and his moonshot is that every teacher has 26 AI teachers that they're monitoring to help that kid get the individual help they need, not for the kid to go and lose creativity. That's not it, but it could train or individualize medicine. I live with multiple sclerosis. So imagine if, and I had to like fight to get my diagnosis. Imagine if an AI could have scanned my MRI and said, oh no, she has MS, let's get her in this track or whatever, because it's seen a million MRIs of people with a certain condition. That's where I think we need to focus it and not on this like removing creativity, because humans, we will go to the easiest place we can. And I don't want us to do that. But I think that I wish educators would figure out how to use it to teach kids how to use it. And a lot of educators are doing this, but not use it to write papers. Or you write your first paper and then, okay, go back and forth with it. How can you enhance it? How can you correct the AI? What did the AI get wrong? Edit this AI's paper and tell the AI what it got wrong. Like there's ways to integrate it. That's all I'm saying. So that's why I'm saying don't ban it from using it for materials and outputs, yes, but not the use of learning it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, that's a sensitive area to my heart.
It's sensitive for me too, because like I am still very much so in some PTSD from like, you know, having to go back and forth. Like I got integrated with ChatGPT because my students thought that I was absolutely ridiculous. And they thought like, oh, she's old, she's not going to know that I did this on a computer.
Wild.
Like, no, sir, and ma'am.
With the
like,
blue screen? What take it without
just lazy and trifling. Like
none of my students do that. they at least formatted a little bit.
70 to 80% of these jokes copy and pasted it exactly.
I gotta go do a little harder digging. Like, okay, did they?
All right. Well, before we get out of here, AI, you have, I believe, a book that I think I saw come out.
Yes.
The children's book. So do you want to talk about that real quick?
I am always here for a plug, and the reason why I'm all here for AI for Kids, because that's literally what I'm talking about. So my book is called AI Meets AI. It's about a little girl named Addie Iris. Her initials are AI. Also, my initials are AI, but she meets a AI robot lost in the city of Baltimore whose GPS is malfunctioned and is trying to get back home to its lab. And she helps the AI robot make it home. The reason I did that is because, again, every time I talk to people who look like us, they're like, no. So I'm trying to introduce it, one, in a city that has two different paradigms. One, we have some of the best institutions, Johns Hopkins, Loyola, Notre Dame, University of Maryland. All these different institutions are literally here in the city of Baltimore, where kids don't even have to leave to go to great institutions. But at the same time, some of the most disparities across the US are also here. So I introduced it here for that reason, for folks to see, like, even in a world where all these access is available, but there's barriers that are keeping kids from getting the access, and letting kids to start to see themselves interacting with this tool, because we have to be at that table. And I want kids to go from being users of it, particularly Black and brown kids who don't have access to that, to creators of it. So that's another reason why I'm such an advocate for AI in the classroom, but not for AI creating materials for kids. But the book is called AI Meets AI, and it's available on Amazon, or you can find it on my website at aidigitels.com. cybersecurity.com.
All right, we will drop those links in the description if you're looking at this on YouTube, and then we'll drop them also on our website. So super excited about that. Mary, I know you have Cyberjutsu Day coming up. Anything else you'd like to plug?
Cyberjutsu Day, June, Nationals Baseball Stadium. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be awesome. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Also, Black Women in Cyber, the collective Securing Our Future book is out. Myself and Tennisha are both authors in that, so make sure you get a copy of that.
Why don't I know about this?
It's a great book.
It is.
There's so many great stories, so many tips.
Wait, you're not gonna be able to see it. All right, there you go.
I'll order it right now.
You just meet some amazing women in that book, and it's like, oh my god, I she's my spirit animal. I guess I can make this announcement too, because we just finished today. I have a study guide dropping in June, hopefully, certified in cyber.
Yay!
Very good.
That's the ISC squared foundation level cybersecurity exam, right?
Yes. When does this get published? And yeah, I'm always looking for volunteers at Cyberjutsu, so come on through for teaching AI stuff to folks and teachers.
Is that event open in June for folks to attend?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a conference. It's a one day conference. I went last year. Actually, I went the past couple of years, and it's absolutely amazing. So
I will be there.
Definitely check it out. On that note, we have our conference coming up. It's called SquadCon, so Black Girls Hack. It is in August in Las Vegas during Hacker Summer Camp. So super excited about that. And so this was AI Thoughts Online, episode 1. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.